To everyone, thank you all for hanging out with us for a few minutes here as we talk about the next iteration of our Making America the crypto capital of the world. I take that mandate from President Trump as a serious mandate that we will accomplish, that we have the great opportunity to see America take back what has always been ours, which is to be the economic powerhouse in the world. And I think the next iteration of our economy includes digital assets in a way that no one could have imagined 5 years ago, or someone did, but it wasn't me. And I want to thank Bo, the executive director for the White House, for coming over and really moderating a conversation about this. But before you start the conversation in earnest, when you think about the success that is potentially in store for not only America, but for the world because of the Genius Act signing into law, what would you say to that?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to thank you, Chairman Scott. I want to thank you, Senator Lummis, for all of your hard work that you've put into ensuring that the U.S. will become the crypto capital of the world. I mean, the president's given a clear mandate. He wants to be the Bitcoin superpower and the crypto capital. I think we're well on our way of achieving that due to the hard work that you've put in over here. And as it relates to Genius, I mean, you're talking about an enormous unlock. You're talking about revolutionizing the financial system in a way that we haven't seen in decades. Updating archaic payment rails, you're looking at instant settlement times, cost-effective transactions, complete transparency. You're also talking about something that basically secures U.S. dollar global dominance for decades to come. You're looking at a world in which the U.S. dollar might be the only fiat currency that exists in 2 to 3 decades. That's how important this is. And you know, it's a testament to your leadership over here to push this forward. We look forward to the House taking this up and sending it over to the President's desk. And then we look forward to moving on to market structure and giving the industry the clarity they need to build and innovate here in the United States. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you. Let me just say of the chairwoman of our Committee on Digital Assets, Cynthia, thank you for your leadership on such an important topic that I do believe that Bo hit the nail on the head. I wish I had a recorder. I'm sure that someone else does, because what you just said I think is powerful. Revolutionary is what we're talking about with the Genius Act. And the next iteration, the market structure, I think is incredibly important as we talk through those market principles and look at the Clarity Act. But if we get just the Genius Act right, it can have powerful impact. But for the market to function completely, we need both. And that's why I think it's important from my perspective as the guy that will at least guide be part of the glide path for the market structure to come to fruition. I want to set a timeline, Cynthia, or I should say Senator Chairwoman Lummis, of seeing the market structure completed before the end of September. I think that is a realistic expectation. Don't you think so, Senator Lummis, Chairwoman Lummis?
Well, yes, sir. You're the chairman, and we will do as you wish. We will make sure that we're ready to do that. We put out the guidelines for a framework of the overarching principles in a market structure bill. We had a hearing on it this week. We will take those guidelines and work with legislation that was drafted in the House, as well as the Lummis-Gillibrand bill that has been out for 4 years. And we will sift through the principles of both that adhere to our guiding and overarching principles. We'll have a bill draft that we can hopefully put out before the August recess, then mark it up in September and have it where you want it.
Great. Bo, when you have two senators, we oftentimes start talking.
Hey, that's okay with me.
Thank you for moderating this really important conversation. So we'll stop talking and start listening.
Absolutely. Well, I have a few questions to you guys. Looking forward to fleshing some of this out. And one question you've already answered, which is timeline for market structure. I think it's extremely important. But let's hop right into it if you guys are ready. So, Senators, the Genius Act marks a major milestone for stablecoin regulation in the digital assets industry. It's now all systems go with comprehensive market structure legislation. Why do you think it's important for Congress to pass standalone market structure legislation? You've obviously answered the timeline question, but what do you think the ramifications are if Congress fails to act here?
I'll just say that there can be no failure to act on market structure. Market structure has to happen in order for America, and I say this sincerely, and not simply because it was a campaign promise made, but it's actually keeping that promise is really helpful for the notion of democratization. It is impossible for us to give greater access to people who grew up as I did in poverty in a single-parent household. If democratization to me means lowering the cost for single moms and for other folks and increasing access. The one thing we can see, I was talking to a group of Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises, and they said that Genius Act is like a 3% increase in their profits overnight. And so getting market structure done means that we're also talking about setting the stage, this global stage for the innovators of the world to descend upon America, because certainty and predictability is the path to greatness in any business. It doesn't matter what it is. Every single business needs certainty and they need predictability. Under the Biden administration, they had the exact opposite. They would spend, those in the digital asset industry would spend a lot of money getting a lawyer to present this is what will work in the market here in America, just to have Gensler come back and poo-poo on it, so to speak, and go in an opposite direction. And so enforcement actions is not the way to create predictability in the marketplace. And I'm very thankful that we now have an administration not only committed to America being the crypto capital of the world, but giving innovators, giving consumers the kind of certainty and predictability that will lead to this nation being the leader on it. Senator Lummis?
This asset class has so much potential as part of a diversified allocation for individual portfolios, for retirement funds, for endowment funds, and for a strategic reserve in some cases, depending on the asset. So having digital money, which is what certainly Bitcoin is in keeping with where we are in our 21st century trajectory. It started with the internet. The NSA wanted to keep the internet proprietary to government. And finally, individuals, the cypherpunks, the cryptographers, won through the courts the right to use it in the private sector by delineating cryptography as protected free speech. That's what enabled digital assets to exist. And now we're at the next place where we need to enable digital assets to be used all over the world to get money to each other faster and cheaper. And as was mentioned about, was it Chick-fil-A that you said you met with?
KFC.
KFC, okay.
Microphone works, wow.
It's the same with the convenience stores. You know, they were required to stay open during COVID because they were deemed an essential service, and yet their profit margins are minuscule. And this can be a game changer for convenience stores and grocery stores and businesses that have very small profit margins. It allows them to get money from me when I buy lettuce right back into purchasing more merchandise to send to stores and do it faster and cheaper for everyone. It helps the consumer, it helps the business person, and interestingly, stablecoins specifically, because they are 100% US dollar backed, are backed by US treasuries. And one of the 20 biggest holders of treasuries in the world currently is a stablecoin company. And we will see more stablecoin businesses come into that top 20 holders of US treasuries, using those treasuries to back their stablecoins. In doing that, that creates a stronger, more robust market for U.S. Treasuries and helps, once again, assure, as Bo said, that the U.S. dollar continues to dominate worldwide.
Well, one of the things I thought about, though, is Cynthia was talking, was the importance of really pausing for a second and focusing on what you said, which was revolutionary. Yeah. If the Genius Act requires backing of every dollar in stable coins requires a dollar in reserves, our treasuries, $2 trillion is the number that I think Bill Hagerty mentioned. It could be an explosive opportunity, number one. Number two, I saw Bill Pulte over at the FHFA suggested that he's going to lead in making sure that as you're looking for a home, that the digital asset portfolio that you have, specifically, I think he may have mentioned Bitcoins, can be used as a part of what helps you determine your credit worthiness for home ownership. So we're talking about multiple steps in the right direction. That's why I wanted you to repeat what you said about the revolutionary opportunity that we're discussing today. This is not just another piece of legislation. This is not just another step in the right direction. This is actually a revolution that could happen economically in our country.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, this legislation, stablecoin legislation, acts as the foundation for pretty much everything else to be built upon in this space. When you update the payment rails, you're creating a world in which you can entertain tokenized public securities in 24/7 markets. And that's why I stated what I did earlier. If you want to access our capital markets, you're going to have to use a dollar-backed stable. But we certainly recognize, and that's why I appreciate your commitment to this timeline on market structure. This is one piece of the puzzle. We need to give clarity to the rest of the folks in this industry, and we're certainly keen on delivering on that. And the president's made it extremely clear that he wants to see both of these bills hit his desk. But again, just thankful for the hard work and thankful for your commitments there.
Yes, sir.
Here's the next question I have for you. I mean, obviously, you guys know better than anybody else. It's really tough to balance regulation with over-regulation, providing clarity and stifling innovation. And so the lack of action by the Biden administration drove a lot of innovation overseas and offshore in this space. And this will continue to get worse if the U.S. doesn't provide regulatory clarity for the digital assets industry. At the same time, there's a risk of over-regulating. And this would obviously stifle innovation and push it abroad as well. So how do we balance these two issues to keep innovation and capital formation here at home?
Yeah. You, me first.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. We've tried to find that sweet spot legislatively over the last few years. One way is to create clarity between the SEC's jurisdiction and the commodity futures trading jurisdiction over what is a security and what is a commodity. That way, the providers of innovation know where to go for regulation. And then, once that is determined, we want to provide clarity within the regulatory framework, whether it's SEC or CFTC, so that there is an opportunity to quickly, clearly, and without threat of protracted litigation, get your product available to consumers. And so those are ultimate goals of the bills that we're proposing, where we have discussed long and hard the notion of ancillary assets, which is sort of between the two, when it's really difficult to tell what is a security, what is a commodity, and how they are bundled in ways that blur the distinction. And so those are the kinds of things that we will be pursuing as we further craft our legislation. And the great thing about having had a draft out on this for years is the industry's had a chance to vet this over and over and over, and do it in light of the way they've been innovating in this space for the last 4 years. Some of the things, for example, that Senator Gillibrand, when we originally crafted our legislation, did not know or contemplate have come to light as the industry has continued to innovate in this space over the last 4 years. So, and the industry's been great about working with us to define that language. Then we saw the House last year pass Fit 21, which even though it was not quite ready for enactment, showed that the House can pass market structure legislation on a bipartisan basis. And I think that was a key moment for us. Now they have the institutional memory, the muscle memory, if you will, about how to pass market structure legislation. We had lost all muscle memory in the Senate about how to pass legislation out of the Banking Committee. As the chairman knows, it had been 8 years since the Banking Committee brought a piece of legislation out of committee and to the floor, and that was the Genius Act. And it was a monumental challenge just to get it out of committee. And then after we got it out of committee and had to further negotiate, we lost a cloture vote, for crying out loud, and had to go back again to the drawing board. So this was a very unusual birthing, as my old friend Simpson used to say. It's like giving dry birth to a porcupine, and that's what it was. It was monumentally difficult, and we accomplished it because we wouldn't give up. And we're not going to give up on market structure.
We're going to succeed on market structure. In our deadline of September 30th has been set, and we're going to accomplish it. Number one. Number two, I think innovation always happens before regulation. The market is always ahead of government. To do it backwards is, frankly, to destroy innovation wherever you have over-regulation. And what we saw in the Biden administration really was that death, so to speak. It was this inability to figure out certainty and predictability. I oftentimes go back to when I was an entrepreneur, running insurance agencies and in a little real estate company. I always go back to those days where you think about what's possible in the marketplace. You go do it, and then you say, I wonder what this means legally, and then you figure it out. And so from my perspective, innovation always precedes regulation. Then regulation comes up, and because of the regulatory environment that's set, that's predictable, what we then see is a more nuanced marketplace where the players in the market, they decide, okay, based on the rules of the road that we understand, we're going to try A, B, and C. Sometimes A loses, B wins, A and C loses. And then you go back to B that won, and then you start innovating there again, and then the regulatory environment comes back and says, okay, we did not contemplate this because the market is smarter than the government, and then they start regulating again. And that leads to another version of innovation. And so innovation happens, regulation comes. Because of the regulations that are set, that are easily understood and digested, innovation happens again. And so the dynamic nature of the marketplace is that it will continue to innovate when the rules are certain. When the rules are not certain, what happens? Singapore. They go somewhere else and figure it out.
No, I think you're exactly right, Mr. Chairman. One thing that comes up a lot in this space, just an issue or a topic area, is illicit finance. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there that most of illicit finance happens in this space. We obviously know that's not true, and it typically happens through traditional payment rails as people become very accustomed to getting around the rules there.
Yes.
But my question for you guys is that illicit finance is often raised as a reason for heavy-handed crypto regulation. What's your response to concerns that crypto plays an outsized role in money laundering, and how do you plan to balance national security and innovation in market structure legislation with this?
I'll let the experts speak on this, but I'll give you the light brush first. I mean, the fact of the matter is two things that we always have in mind. I've had many conversations with Cynthia on these topics, and one of the things that we always start with is actually investor protection. We want to make sure we have a marketplace that works for the investor, that the consumer feels protected because they understand the rails put in place as well. And then there's always a conversation about AML. The truth of the matter is that the easiest way to see money laundering happen is cash. The hardest way to do it is when there's a digital footprint in place. And so from my perspective, I've read a number of those magazine articles that say that cash is the preferred vehicle for everything that happens that's bad. The truth of the matter is that we establish a market structure here in America using the blockchain technology. What you then have is a permanent footprint that allows us to have a much better deterrent because of market structure legislation on the digital asset space that allows for it to be used less and less and less as we come up with more rules of the road. That's my theory on it.
And we have worked and will continue to work with FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. We will continue to work with companies like Chainalysis, private sector companies that do forensic analysis of transactions in digital assets. They have testified repeatedly before the Banking Committee that it's easier to solve a crime in digital assets than it is to solve a crime in cash. And it's because there is a digital footprint for a crime in a digital asset. So we'll work with the crime solvers like the Chainalyses of the world. We'll work with the regulators, FinCEN and others. And we'll work with, and I want to specifically mention this, the Intel Committee in the House and the Senate, because on both sides, House and Senate, they expressed major concerns. And so we involved the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intel Committee in our marathon of negotiations and revisions to the Genius Act, and we'll involve the Intel Committee sooner in the crafting of the market structure bill. So having some behind-the-scenes working groups involved in crafting the legislation before it's even marked up, I think will be helpful this time. That was a lesson learned from Genius. Mm-hmm. And we'll make sure that they have early input. Yeah.
Yeah, I had dinner last night, just my last thought on this topic of AML. I had dinner last night with the longest-serving FinCEN director, and in this digital asset space, if you have a permanent fingerprint, it is a powerful opportunity to figure out who did it. And that's what the technology allows to happen. It's a permanent fingerprint, so to speak, that never goes away.
No, that's exactly right. Thank you, Senators. Now, look, I know we're coming up on time here, and we want to give an opportunity for folks to ask some questions. But the last question I'll pose to you all is, what message do you hope the Genius Act and your upcoming market structure legislation sends to entrepreneurs, developers, and fintechs looking to build innovative businesses here in the United States?
My answer is simple: open for business. Yeah. America is open for business. We will be the cryptocurrency capital of the world, period. That is our objective. We will achieve our objective. I believe that is the fastest path to American supremacy economically, and there is no other way to get there. This is here to stay. Anyone who doubts that, they're wrong. And so we need to make sure that we do whatever it takes for us to be the innovative capital of the world, which allows investors to come in. Consumer and protection allows for our consumers to engage in a fair marketplace with certainty and predictability. And with the AML provisions that will be a part of the market structure legislation, it allows us to do the right thing over and over again and protect those folks who have nefarious intentions. Cynthia?
You know, President Trump assembled a team at the White House to make sure that this portion of his agenda comes to fruition. He understands the urgency of having the United States create a beachhead for this industry, and he wants to do it as soon as possible. He knows these people can go to Singapore. He knows they have a structure in place. He knows these people can go to the EU. He knows they have a structure in place. We need a regulatory framework that is clear, and we need it yesterday. Amen. And that was made clear by the hearing we had this week earlier in this committee as we vetted our guidelines. The fact that the president prioritized this so highly by putting out an executive order, by assembling a team, including Bo, and is committed to making the United States the leader in digital asset technology and innovation in the financial space and otherwise, is a clear indication that the United States will not rest, and we will not rest, clearly, until we bring this across the finish line and have this industry embed here with a full knowledge that there's going to be a clear regulatory environment that provides for innovation and will allow them to flourish and allow the U.S. to dominate. What we know and what you all know is the United States never sits back. We don't let other countries lead, especially when the innovators are all right here. We don't say, nah, we're tired, just go somewhere else and set up shop. This is a United States that's committed to having old industries come back and have their renewed 21st century presence in the United States and have new industries that were innovated here, stay here, and further grow. When you look at sort of the connection between the internet and that technology, and then digital asset technology, and then AI, they're all interrelated, and they all build on each other because the expertise that it took to get one helps spur on and be a springboard to the other. And so if we're going to win this race, we do it quickly, but with that kind of a hopscotch in mind. So the U.S. we are now, but we are going to embed ourselves in 21st century leadership and innovation in this space. And I'm just so delighted to be part of it, because at my age, I look at, you younger people, and I think—
Thank you.
And I think, how did I get to do this at my age, to be part of something this innovative and this important to the 21st century, when I'm very much a product of the last century? So this is more fun than I can describe. It's also more challenging than I can describe, but we're ready for this. Our sleeves are rolled up. I've got the best team on Capitol Hill. We're reporting for duty, Mr. Chairman.
Ready to roll. Let's get started. All right. Bo, let me just say this to you. Thank you for saying yes to the president. Thank you for being the executive director at the White House on this digital transformation and revolution that's happening here in America. Your youth, your spunk, your wisdom, and frankly, your intellectual curiosity on these topics will serve this nation well. And I actually understand that without much of a question, we will be the crypto capital of the world, because President Trump has assembled a team that's serious about accomplishing the goal. And it's not about President Trump. It's about the American people who deserve that kind of democratization. He is leading us in that direction because he has a mandate from the American people to make sure that our markets are healthy, robust, there's certainty, predictability, so that people want to engage in this innovative future that starts now.
Well, I sincerely appreciate that. I just want to thank both of you for your leadership in this space. Obviously, just based on the conversation we've had here today, I think it's very clear how well you both understand what's happening, what the unlock can be for our country. And we understand fully at the White House that a lot of this heavy lifting is happening on Capitol Hill, and a lot of that weight falls on your back. So we're just extremely grateful for you and helping us ensure that we deliver on the president's promise to make the United States the crypto capital of the world. We are well on our way of achieving that, thanks to your hard work. And with that, I will open it up to some questions. When I call on you, please state your name and the outlet that you are with, because it's easy and you're right in front of me. Amber, do you want to go ahead? Yeah, so if you look at the EO, it did mandate an accounting to take place in which Treasury has spearheaded that. They have received the numbers from the different agencies inside of government. There are a lot of different actors that held on to some Bitcoin in some fashion or another. Now the process begins in terms of establishing the reserve, the actual infrastructure behind it, and getting all of that accomplished. There's nothing in the EO that mandates that report become public, but we could choose to make it public at some point. We are certainly keen on the idea of accumulation. We've stated publicly that Bitcoin is digital gold. We believe it's in the best interest of the United States to garner as much as we can possibly get. I've said that at every conference that I've spoken at in the last 2 to 3 months. Now, obviously, this has to be done in budget-neutral ways that don't cost the taxpayer a dime. The president was clear about that in the executive order. But I think we have some very creative minds, 2 of which are sitting up here with me, and I think we'll begin moving very quickly on that.
That's correct. Yep.
So what's the strategy, and are you in communications with the House?
Well, frankly, the good news is, in a way that is so refreshing, we have had constant communication with French Hill and our House colleagues. We speak at least every other week, if not weekly. We meet every 2 to 3 weeks. We are one team. Frankly, that's the good news, is we see that. That does not mean that we see everything exactly the same, but we resolve issues and we move forward. I've been very clear that I think the president's mandate of moving Genius Act immediately to his desk is in the best interest of the American people, and making sure that there is a timeline for market structure to be completed by September 30th is also what they're concerned about, is not getting market structure done fast enough. And I believe that we can do both in a very time-sensitive manner, and that is why I've committed to a deadline that will be reached. I said before a microphone in this room that within the first 100 days, I'd have digital asset legislation passed by my committee. We did it. We were able to get it passed, and then the full Senate took it up and passed it. This body works in a very bipartisan fashion, so making sure that we not only have clear instructions and guiding principles for the market structure legislation that will be championed by Cynthia, but it is also important for us to recognize that if you don't have 60 votes for it, it doesn't pass. So we've got work to do in this body, but the Clarity Act is formidable and really formational and very important for what we'll be able to accomplish, because we see it as a strong template for us to move forward on. Hey, Claire.
One of the things that is in some previous House versions of market structure legislation is this idea of separation of banking and commerce. There's some bank holding company act like requirements. Can you describe what your approach is to separating banking and commerce in these bills, and how does it differ from House versions?
You know, we face that challenge to a small extent in Genius, and there's strong differences of opinion on both sides of the aisle on this issue. And so having sort of faced that issue to a lesser extent in Genius, we will work with those same parties to see if we can find a sweet spot.
I think if you look at the Genius Act as a template for going forward, one of the things that we did, we spent a lot of time meeting with our banking colleagues and or industry leaders on making sure that the rails that we put in place reflected what currently exists in our banking world and what we want to exist through digital assets. And one of the reasons why, when you read through the Genius Act, you see no interest on stable coins, you see no yield, reward points, is because what we recognize is that what we want are two high-functioning systems that will, at some point, I think, blend together on behalf of the American consumer. And so I think you have to continue to hear from all stakeholders, not just some who are in the most innovative part of our economy, but those who have built the foundation for the economy. So weaving those two together requires us to spend time listening to the priorities that both talk about and finding a way to synergize them. And I think the Genius Act reflects that.
Last question.
Jasper from Pico. Bo, I was going to ask you to weigh in on the sequencing
Well, I don't think there's a debate on timeline. They were looking for a timeline, which is why we're sitting here today and discussing that, and we're super thankful for the senators putting that forth. I'm going to echo the president's statement, which was very clear and articulate. He wants them to move on Genius immediately and put it on his desk, and we can have a great big signing ceremony over at the White House. I'll say this: Genius, if you look at the renditions and everything it went through, actually became much more closer aligned to what you saw in the Stables Act in the House throughout the process. And I think that was, efforts of good faith on this side to bring the bills together in a way that could expedite the timeline to get this thing done. And that's, certainly led us to take the position that we have today, which we think this is an amazing piece of legislation, like I said earlier, that revolutionizes the financial system. That's at our fingertips. Let's get it signed. Let's move on to market structure and do it expeditiously, which the senators have committed to do today.
Thank you.